Hi, thank you for joining today's episode of OpenInfra Live, the first episode of 2022. So happy New Year from me to you. The OpenInfra Live is the show that hosted by the OpenInfra Foundation that airs on Thursdays at 1500 UTC. We have a lot of past episodes that you can find in our YouTube playlist, but today we're going to be talking about what the global OpenInfra community did in 2021 and what they're looking to do in 2022. First, before we get started and introduce our speakers, I'd like to thank the OpenInfra Foundation members. With these organizations, we can't do this without their support. All of our speakers today are from one of these organizations, and these are the folks who are supporting the foundation and helping us build open source communities who write software that runs in production. So what I'm really excited to talk about today is we have 4 leaders from different open source communities to talk about what kind of production momentum they got last year from a development side, as well as some adoption stats as well. And then what's into the future for them for 2022 as well. So today we're going to hear from OpenStack, Kata Containers, StarlingX, and Zuul about what they're doing as a community and how you can get involved. Like I mentioned, this show is live. So if you have questions for any of our speakers throughout the show, please drop them into the chat and we will try to answer those as often as we can, time permitting. And we'll also jump into the chat and answer them there if we don't have time. But let's not hesitate any longer. Let's go ahead and get started. So the first speaker that I'd like to introduce is the chair of the OpenStack Technical Committee. We have Ghanshyam Mann on to talk about the progress the OpenStack community made in 2021 and what's ahead for 2022. Welcome, Ghanshyam.
Thanks, Lisa.
All right.
Yeah, it's been interesting. Like in 2021, we did a lot of things, and now what's our focus will be in 2022. Myself, Ghanshyam Mann, I'm OpenStack Technical Committee Chair. So let's first talk about the releases and highlights we did in 2021. We had 2 releases, OpenStack Wallaby, which was our 23rd on-time release. OpenStack Xena was 24th on-time release. So on-time release is always there. So that's really great work by our release team. And in OpenStack Wallaby, we had focused more on the security and cross-project integration with other OSS software. And in Xena, like it provide more powerful hardware support and OpenStack integration amongst the OpenStack projects. Next slide, please. Yeah. So there are the key features. And if we go with the first is improved integration with the adjacent OSS. For example, Cola added the support for Prometheus version 2. Magnum updated the version of Kubernetes and Containerd. That's really great, like up-to-date integration with Kubernetes. And then Cinder added the support for Ceph backend driver, Ceph IceKZ. Even I think they have more than 60 or 64 drivers supported currently. Then Tacker had implemented a lot of features to move towards the ETSI and FE standards. And other is like integration among the OpenStack project, for example, Nova, Cyborg, Blazor. So there are a lot of integration has happened between OpenStack projects, which will give like all the OpenStack user a more stable features, or if they wanted to integrate the different services in their cloud. Then advanced hardware support features. There are a lot of features in Cinder, Ionic, Cola, Neutron, and even other project also. And Keystone Unified Limit. So Keystone Unified Limit is like a new way to set and enforce the quota for your tenants or projects. And Glance is the first project to implement that. And long pending or long deprecated Cinder v2 APIs has been removed. So now Cinder provides the v3 APIs with micro version, where all the improvement you can see with the micro version, which will be a great help or a easy way for the interop perspective. These are the few key features, but it doesn't mean like these are the only things we did in 2021. We had the separate OpenInfra episode for Wallaby release and the Xena release also, where we had many other projects talked about their features they implemented in 2021. So links are there. You can watch those episodes to get the full list of features we did in this year. In terms of contribution in 2021, I'm like collecting both the release Wallaby plus Xena. So it's around 32,000 plus code change. It's a huge huge number, and around like 800 developers from 140 organization. And with this, like OpenStack is one of the most active open source project. It's been in top 3 with the Linux and Chromium open source. In terms of community updates, if we talk about the community-wide goals, we had 2 goals in 2021, which is one is the migrate RBAC policy format from JSON to YML. So this is like on for RBAC API access control. We have implemented the policy in code. Policy in code means we have the default defined inside the code and they are enforced. But if anyone would like to override those access control, they wanted to restrict the access or they wanted to give more user access to those APIs, then they can always do with the policy file. So we supported 2 format for policy file, JSON and YML. JSON has been always means not so easy for us to like map with our policy in code things, because you cannot comment the rules in the JSON format, right? So what operator does usually is they dump all the default rules in the policy file, because we have the tooling and all, and they commented out all the one which they don't override, and they only keep the one which they wanted to override. So these things are very easy in YML format. So that's why we decided to deprecate the JSON one, and maybe we'll remove it in future. Second goal was migrate from Oslo root wrap to preserve to run the command in sudo run. So root wrap has some performance and security issue. So that's why we are moving to the new library. This work is still under in progress. So these are the 2 things we focused in 2021. In terms of project update, we had new project. Very excited about the Skyline, which is a new dashboard for our OpenStack. So Skyline is now official OpenStack project now. Next is Venus, which is the log management service. That is also a new project. And Tap as a service is also added back to the Neutron Stadium project. And on the project retirement, if we see, we had like 4 projects, Quinlan, Searchlight, Carver, and Neutron FWS being retired. Retired doesn't mean they are gone forever. Means if anyone or any of your company, team, friends, they wanted to maintain it, you can always bring back them and raise the application to governance. For example, Neutron FWS, if you see, there's a discussion going on in OpenStack dash discuss mailing list, like a few of the people or developers, they wanted to maintain Neutron FWS, and Neutron team is going to reconsider that to add it back to the Neutron Stadium. So if you would like to maintain those, if you are using those, so feel free to add back. So currently we have a total 52 projects under OpenStack. And in terms of leadership, we had technical elections. So they both are like project leadership as well as the governance, like technical committee for 9 members. So they are open leadership. So anyone who is contributing in OpenStack and they are eligible to run, so they can always raise hand for these project leadership or the governance leadership. So they are very open. So we had 2 election and it was like smooth going in those. And few of the other updates, we defined the upstream investment opportunities. So what are they like? Wherever community need help, for example, in some of the project we need help, or some of the area where we need help, so we define them in a upstream investment opportunity with all the details, how to contact and what are the business values of those. So if you are individual developer or you are a company, so you can read out those and you can see like where all community need help, and you can plan like to support the community in those. Technical committee weekly meeting we reinitiated, and it been very helpful for us to speed up the things what technical committee used to do, not just like project addition or removal, but a lot of other topics also in terms of providing the technical help to the community. And you might know this OpenStack IRC network moved to OFTC. And if you would like to know the details, how to join, what are the settings, there is a blog or there's a contributor guide or even the OpenDAV. documentation. You can search and you can find out like how to move from Freenode to OFTC. Project team gathering, 2 PTZ we did in 2021, one for Zena and one for Yoga in April and October. And these PTZ like are not like just OpenStack developers are discussing among them, but it is beyond that. There are like other infra project also, even other OSS communities also they are joining and discussing about their use case, features, or even governance. So they have been very helpful for us, and both were like virtual PTZ in 2021. In terms of like cross community collaboration, we had few of the progress among like other open source community. We did collaboration. One is with the Kubernetes community leadership. With Kubernetes steering committee, we had met various platform. In PTZ, we have usually a session with them, and we share the feedback and their governance part, or even sometimes technical part also. In OpenInfra Live episode also, we have came together and discussed the things. So that has been a really great collaboration between these two community. And one is OpenStack regained the core infrastructure initiative system best practice badge. And thanks to Terry for checking and updating those things. It's a really good badge for OpenStack community. And cross-community integration and feature, which we talked about, for example, Magnum updating the Kubernetes version and containerd. So there are a lot of cross-community integration going on in various OpenStack projects. And about the next in 2022 and beyond, we had like every project plan their features. So in PTZ, if you join them in Yoga PTZ discussion, if you see, or if you are going to join the next PTZ happening in April 3rd or 4th, so there they plan their individual features. So these are the three things I've listed here, which we as a community is focusing as a whole. So RBAC is about the default we wanted to make as more close to the operator's need, so that they don't need to override the defaults. So we are introducing system scope also, like a kind of a higher level of a person doing the system level operation or a project level operation. We are isolating those things. So there are a lot of improvement in RBAC, and yes, that will be great to focus in 2022. OSC OpenStack client is a unified limit, unified our CLI, so which have been focusing since many years, but we'll be focusing more in next year also. And this is the new thing, like we have collected the pain points from projects as well as from the operators, and we have continued the brainstorming on those. In TC, we schedule the meetings and we go through those pain points. So we'll continue that. And if something comes up, like we have to focus or implement those, so that will continue all these. So these are our next focus.
Awesome. Thanks, Ghanshyam. I know there's a lot going on in the OpenStack community and cross community, and I think you'll have another release coming up in the next couple of months, right? Are we on Y, I think?
Yeah, it's named Yoga. So that is coming on 30th of March. Development is going on. So if you'd like to join us or help us, ping us there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And we'll bring you back at the end for questions from the audience. All right, next we're going to hear about Kata Containers. This was the first project that the OpenInfra Foundation started supporting in addition to OpenStack. So I'm really excited to have Peng Tao on from Ant Group to talk about what they've been doing over the last year and what's to come in 2022. Welcome.
Thank you, Anderson. This is Tarpan from Ant Group, and next slide, please. And okay, Kata Containers now. This is the current architecture of Kata Containers. Kata continues to work smoothly with Kubernetes ecosystem, and this year we have added Kata Monitor to connect to permissions, so that we can export Kata metrics for the users, and this makes Kata Containers to work even more smoothly with the Kubernetes ecosystem. And key features this year, except for Kata Monitor, we have also supported with IO pass-through, so that if if you are searching for extreme performance with Kata, we can now pass through the VFIO devices directly to the guest, and it will deliver the raw device performance for your application. And also, we have supported non-root VMM so that in cases where security is extremely concerned, we do not want to expose the root privilege to even to QEMU. And also, we have supported watchable months. It's a non-requiring feature for our users so that they can do a notify within the guest. And also, we have supported GDX and SEV so that Kata is now part of the computational container ecosystem. And statistics-wise, this year we have delivered steady 23 releases, and the latest stable is 2.3.0. And we have seen more than 1,400 changes by 95 contributors from 16 organizations. And from what we can see, the top 5 contributing companies include Intel, Red Hat, Group, IBM, and Apple. And we are seeing more and more production usage of Kata, and as usual, Group is deploying Kata containers in very large scale in production. And this year we have seen Red Hat delivering Kata containers and as a vendor product. They have just released they have just GA'd their Kata container sandbox solution in OpenShift. And as usual, IBM is a strong supporter of Kata and is using Kata with their production or with their products. And we have seen more and more startups using Kata as well. Databricks is using Kata to build their cloud solution for their users. And there's a new startup, Titanium, that is using Kata to run spot instances on AWS and show their solution and save a lot of money for their customers. And we are connecting more and more usage of Kata, and they will all show up in our latest annual report that will come soon. And then next year we will focus on these points. First, we will make Kata work even tighter to the container ecosystem. Namely, we will look at Kata United CNI and CSI to make the CNI and CSI components work even better for Kata. And another key feature we are currently working on is to justify Kata runtime. Right now, Kata runtime is written in Go, and it will cost some memory for the users. And we are working with the community to rewrite it in Rust, and this will save a lot of memory, and then turns out to be more density for our users. And we are part of the work we are doing in 2021. We are supporting Kata containers computational container use case, and this work will continue in this year as well. And with all the above, we are aiming at releasing Kata 3.0 at the mid of the year, and hopefully we can release it before the Berlin Summit. That's it.
Awesome. Thanks, Peng Tao, on the update around Kata containers. It's exciting to see all of the momentum, especially around the confidential computing use case. I know we did an episode of OpenInfra Live a few months ago around, and folks from AMD were talking about how they're using Kata containers for that. So very interesting and exciting to see that progress. We'll bring you back at the end of the show for questions from the audience.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have James Blair from the Zuul community, and who is a maintainer of the project, to talk about what Zuul has going on and what's coming this year, including hopefully a new release. Take it away, James.
Thank you, Allison. as Allison mentioned, I'm the maintainer and the current project lead for the Zuul project. Zuul is a project gating system. It originally started out helping OpenStack test all of its changes before they merged and continues to do so. But over the past few years, we've really grown the project, and it's being adopted by more and more other projects and organizations. So what's been happening with Zuul for the past year is we've been working on a pretty big release that addresses a number of issues, scaling and high availability. We've improved our admin user interface. We've upped our game as far as our drivers for interacting with other systems. And probably like everybody else out there, we've been doing more and more work to help the system run better in containers. So I'm going to talk about all of that and give you a little bit of our version 4 and version 5 roadmap coming up. So I think our biggest focus over the past year has been around scaling. Zuul has, since almost the beginning, been a very scalable system in that it has a number of distributed components. It has components that it has a web component, executor components that actually run the CI and CD jobs, mergers that just perform Git operations, log streaming gateways, stuff like that. And all of these components have been scalable almost since the very beginning. So the system can get larger and larger as it runs more jobs, all except for one. And that is the component we call the scheduler, which is responsible for watching all of the events from remote systems, deciding what jobs to run and with what parameters and that sort of thing. So that has, because that's sort of the brains of the system, it's been a bit difficult to scale that, and so we did not start out that way. We did not start out with that as a scalable component. It was a single point of failure, and as the systems have gotten larger and larger, that's become more and more of a problem. I've seen Zuul systems where when you need to restart for an update, it might be down for 10 or 15 minutes. So that's not great from a usability perspective. It's not terrible because, I mean, it's a CI system. Everything's a little bit asynchronous anyway, but still, especially if you've got long-running jobs and things like that, you really want to take as little downtime as possible. So that you can keep everybody moving at a good pace. So we've been focused a lot on that over the past year. What we've done is we've actually moved all of this in-memory state into Zookeeper. So that's a distributed storage system, so that we can have multiple schedulers. They can all see the same state. And in fact, we actually have all of the components using this Zookeeper cluster as their state storage now. And this allows us to run multiple schedulers at once for fault tolerance purposes. They also act cooperatively, so we can actually increase the overall throughput by running more schedulers. And it lets us do rolling upgrades and rolling restarts and things like that. So at this point, with these changes in, Zuul actually has no single points of failure. The system itself relies only on Zookeeper. Zookeeper itself is a fault-tolerant distributed system. We also require a database, but we're several decades into knowing how to run fault-tolerant databases at this point. So things are looking really good from both scaling and high availability standpoint at this point. We've made a number of improvements that are user visible as well. The most notable is probably the admin user interface. So Zuul has had a web interface for a while that's basically been read-only. and so that lets you see the jobs that are in the system, see what they're running, see the logs that they've produced, that sort of thing. But any interaction with the system has always been through either primarily the code review system, Garrett, GitHub, that sort of thing. And then secondarily, there are some admin commands that if you have root on the Zuul scheduler or something like that, you can run. And then recently we started adding a REST API. So there's actually a Zuul client command now, but you need to get an admin token for it and that sort of thing. So it's still not terribly convenient for end users. Our recent changes, however, have added the ability to log in to the web interface with a number of pluggable OpenID Connect based systems. So users, if they have accounts with administration access, they can click a button to log in, and then once they're logged in, there are buttons on the interface to dequeue changes, re-enqueue changes, promote changes to the top of the queue, and auto hold nodes. The auto hold thing is particularly interesting because that lets you very quickly, if you see that a change is failing repeatedly and you don't understand why, or you can't reproduce it locally, that sort of thing, you can log into the system and tell it to auto hold the next failing job for that change and get access to that node right away. So it's a big help in debugging. We've also added some other usability improvements. There's now a visual build timeline. So once all of the builds for a change are complete, you can look at a sort of a Gantt chart of the builds and see what build depended on what other build, what took the longest, where you can focus your effort on improving build runtimes to speed things up. And then finally, we've done a little bit of UI modernization as well. So the interface is it looks a little better. It's a little easier to use, more consistent, that sort of thing. So we've actually put a lot of effort into the user experience here. Again, on the back end, Zuul is nothing if it doesn't connect to remote systems. That's either code review systems like Garrett, GitHub, etc., or cloud systems like OpenStack, AWS, and others. We've focused some effort on in this area as well. We've added a new driver for Azure, so Zuul can now run jobs on Azure VMs and other Azure resources. We've improved the support for both GitHub and GitLab. So those drivers support some of the newer features now. And we're working on an IBM Cloud driver that's mostly written. It's in review, so I actually expect that to land really soon now. The really interesting thing about all of these drivers is that we support, this is not an either or situation. Zuul supports combining changes from, say, Garrett and GitHub, or GitHub and GitLab, or any of the drivers that it supports together, and testing them together. Similarly, all the clouds that we support them all at the same time. So sort of going back to the theme of scalability and fault tolerance, you can have a CI system that is fault tolerant at the cloud level. So you can lose an entire cloud and the system stays up and running. And then, as I said, like just about everybody else out there, we're spending a lot of time on containers. We've been working on the process of running Zuul itself in containers. The upstream project builds container images for every release and every commit. And I think at this point, quite a large number, perhaps the majority of Zuul installations at this point are running from container builds. that's the way that that we run Zuul's own Zuul, and I highly encourage it for anybody else. Whether you run those containers in Kubernetes or some other system, we're not terribly opinionated about, but I personally would recommend running it in containers because you get the benefit of, I mean, Zuul has a lot of dependencies on system tooling and whatnot, and so it's great to have a consistent environment between all of the different Zuul installations out there. It really simplifies things a lot. We do have a Zuul operator for Kubernetes and OpenShift. We've improved that a lot over the past year. So if you want to sort of deploy a system in a declarative manner, that's a great way of doing so. You can install this operator and then create a Zuul CRD that specifies how many executors you want, that sort of thing, and the system gets spun up. We've added Prometheus support, so there's sort of an initial amount of statistics that we're emitting via Prometheus. Right now, we're actually more focused on getting out there to get sort of some basic performance metrics and liveness checks, readiness probes, that sort of thing, up and running. So again, these are all really in service of running in that containerized, possibly Kubernetes environment. And finally, at the end, I will talk about our roadmap. And I'm talking about the end because how we've been doing this is, I think, pretty interesting. Zuul doesn't do time-based releases. We actually we release when we achieve certain levels of features. And so what we wanted to do, since we knew the effort to make Zuul multi-scheduler was going to be a large effort, we didn't want to do that sort of off on the side and then dump it on everybody at the end. We wanted to try to bring the entire community along with us as we made this change. So what we did is we released version 4 to signal the start of this effort. We made a couple of breaking changes in version 4 that said, okay, operators, invest a little bit of time here, prepare your system for what we know is coming. Do that when you upgrade to version 4, and then as we move closer and closer to making Zuul multi-scheduler, we'll keep making releases throughout that process. And all of those releases you should be able to upgrade to without making any major deployment changes. And then before you know it, someday you'll just be able to run a second scheduler. And that's actually the point where we're at now. We've released something like 17 versions of Zuul since version 4. And at this point, Zuul, you can actually run multiple schedulers in production. We're still kind of putting a bow on it. We're making sure it's stable. We're looking for places where we might need to do a little more performance improvements, that sort of thing. But it is running with multiple schedulers in production now, and so we're I would say near as makes no difference to Zuul version 5. We will very shortly, hopefully within the next few weeks, be releasing version 5 itself, which will that'll sort of signify that we're confident that we're at the end of this road, and all of our features are in place and really ready for use. So that's what what we've been up to for the past year, and what we're going to be looking forward to in the next year.
Awesome, thanks, Jim. And I know Thierry Carez had dropped a comment asking what features would be coming in V5, but you actually kind of talked about that. But one of the things that I think is really interesting about Zuul is a lot of your production users like BMW and Volvo and Leboncoin are actually upstream contributors as well. So with this like long list of features, which ones have been particularly user driven based on what their experience is with Zuul itself?
I think actually all of them are. The So to focus on the headline feature, right? The multi-scheduler HA fault tolerance scalability stuff. That's been, it's really been a community effort, but BMW kind of has been really pushing on that because they really want to drive the scalability aspect. They're doing a lot with Zuul, and they want to continue to be able to do more with Zuul. So they're really pushing the envelope there.
Awesome. It's awesome to see that they have that opportunity since they are involved with the upstream process. Thierry did want to get a question in though, and so he actually asked a new one and said that Zuul started with OpenStack, so that's where the original requirements are coming from. But which of those new features are actually coming from a different user? So I know you mentioned BMW, which is also an OpenStack user, but are there other requirements that are coming specifically from non-OpenStack users?
Yes. So you mentioned Volvo as well earlier. They've been driving a lot of the work on Azure and using running tests on Windows nodes. So I didn't mention it in our in the slides here, but that is something that we've worked on over the past year as well. We've been improving support for running jobs on Windows. So Volvo has been a big driver of that, and that's coming directly from their use cases.
Awesome. And it's fun to be able to say that BMW and Volvo are driving the requirements. To squeeze a pun in is always a nice benefit as well.
I'm not going to apologize for that.
Well, thank you, James. I know this was a lot of great updates, and it's exciting to see Zuul v5 coming out very soon. And we'll bring you back on shortly for questions from the audience.
All right. Thank you.
All right. And our last presenter today is Greg Waynes from the StarlingX Technical Steering Committee. So he's going to be talking about what that community's been up to last year and heading into 2022. Take it away, Greg.
Great. Thanks, Allison. The first slide I had was really just a refresher on what StarlingX is, because we always get that question occasionally in these meetings. So StarlingX, just as an overview, is a fully managed, fully integrated, ready to deploy Kubernetes or Kubernetes and containerized OpenStack solution on bare metal. And so the key features that StarlingX provides is really infrastructure management of the bare metal hardware underneath, as well as all the different open source software packages that we're running in the solution, where Kubernetes and OpenStack are the biggest of those software open source packages. And so the StarlingX infrastructure management is all about making it easy to install, easy to manage, highly scalable, highly performant, and highly available. The other key feature in StarlingX is our ability to scale from a single server solution really up to kind of a geographically distributed system of multiple edge clouds. And that's what's shown in the bottom right, is really we have a distributed cloud capability that has a central cloud that really manages multiple subclouds at the edges of the networks, where those subclouds are standalone, Kubernetes or OpenStack clouds, either running Kubernetes or OpenStack. And the idea is that the StarlingX infrastructure management has been extended to basically provide orchestration of the infrastructure across all of these subclouds in order to provide that ease of management of the multiple subclouds. And we've actually been very successful in the last couple of years around users in the 5G telecom area taking advantage of StarlingX, and specifically the distributed cloud architecture in StarlingX. So what have we done in 2021? So StarlingX has 2 releases a year, and just listed some of the key features that we've done. In the first half of the year, we did some enhancements to our storage. We supported rewrite many for Ceph, our Ceph solution, which allowed shareable PVCs between containerized workloads. We added an option for using Rook instead of our host-based uncontainerized Ceph solution. So that was a nice add. In security, we added did some integration of some other open source containerized projects. We integrated HashiCorp's Vault, which provides secret management. So really making it such that if there's containerized applications that already leverage HashiCorp Vault, it makes it easier for them to port to StarlingX. We leveraged IBM's Proteus, which does container image signature validation, just to ensure that the images that you're pulling on pod creations are authentic. We also added V3 for SNMP. We previously supported SNMP v2c, so V3 is definitely a more secure solution. We integrated metric server that gives us auto scaling for containerized workloads. Edge Worker Node was a nice add that we added. It basically allows a non-StarlingX node to actually to join the StarlingX Kubernetes cluster. So it's kind of a less managed node, but because it really only requires Kubernetes. But the advantage to that is it can be a very small footprint node, right? Because Kubernetes can basically run on Raspberry Pi. So you could add Raspberry Pis into the cluster, and then that node gets all the advantages of whatever services are on that StarlingX Kubernetes cluster. As far as distributed cloud, which again I mentioned is a key feature. We kind of completed support for some of the different deployment configs of our subclouds, the all-in-one duplex, as well as the standard multi-node subcloud. We fully supported those now as subclouds. Our key users for distributed clouds are actually focused on all-in-one simplex subclouds, and we improved the scaling there. I think it used to be only 50. We went up to 200, and you can see in the second half of the year, kind of the bottom right, we increased the scaling up to 800 subclouds, and we're continuing to do scaling work on that. The other things that we did in the second half of the year was StarlingX does include like a built kernel based on CentOS today. We did upgrade the kernel in that CentOS solution from, I think we were on a very old Linux version, 3 something. So we up-versioned it to 5.10. We also updated Kubernetes from, I think, 1.18 we were on up to 1.21. We want to kind of regularly keep pace with Kubernetes upversions. They upversion 3 times a year. For storage, again, we did the upversion of our Ceph solution from Mimic to Nautilus. Security, we did a lot of work on certificates in security in the second half of the year. We leveraged Cert Manager, which is another open source containerized project. We leverage it for platform certificates, for the StarlingX certificates, basically making it easier for auto renewals. We added alarming for certificate expiries, because there are a lot of certificates in a Kubernetes solution, as well as all of the payloads can have certificates as well. We added a mechanism to update the Kubernetes root CA, which is a tricky one because that's the trusted CA at the top of Kubernetes, and it's kind of the Kubernetes CNCF provides a procedure for that, but it's quite complicated. So we provided some wrappers around it to make it much easier, and even orchestrated it in our distributed cloud solution. The other distributed cloud thing we did was really supporting simplex deployment configs and subclouds being migrated to duplex, basically, without having to do a full reinstall or anything. There was some work that we had to do there. We also, because of the increased scaling in distributed clouds, we had to do the ability to rehome subclouds to different central clouds. And that's basically because some of our users in the field right now have literally, I don't know, like I think it's more than, like on the order of 4,000 or 5,000 subclouds, and deploying, hundreds a month, basically. Because we're providing better scalability, they used to have multiple distributed cloud systems, and now they're kind of merging them together with the subcloud rehoming. The next slide for 2022, a lot of this is really being defined, so none of this is confirmed yet. We talked about some of this in our PTG. A big feature that we have for the first half of the year is, as everybody knows, CentOS is not being provided as an open source solution for RHEL anymore. And StarlingX was based on CentOS for its kernel. So we're moving to Debian. There's a lot of work involved in that. And we're also even, we're obviously updating the installer as part of that for Debian, but we're also leveraging OS Tree in an attempt to provide kind of faster and more in-service type kernel updates when we do upgrades of StarlingX. Some of the other things that are kind of on the list of things to consider is, like I said, we're going to really regularly update Kubernetes. So we're going to move to 1.2.3. There's some Kubernetes configuration that we manage as part of the infrastructure managing Kubernetes. We want to enhance that. We leverage our Armada in StarlingX from Airship, and Armada's sort of being deprecated. It kind of got a bit of new life in it with support for Helm v2 recently, but we're following kind of Airship's lead in moving to Flux in order to support complex applications that have multiple Helm charts per for the overall application. OpenStack, containerized OpenStack is the biggest example of that. It has basically a Helm chart for every OpenStack service. Some other things, we're regularly doing work on PTP enhancements for the 5G support. This one is to bring in 5G SyncE support. We're going to integrate Istio for service mesh capabilities. Some security work we're doing. Kubernetes, we're providing some value add around multi-tenancy. Kubernetes has a lot of bits and pieces of multi-tenancy, and we're providing kind of a playbook and doc update for that. And then the other key security thing that we're doing is a lot of customers want even the Kubernetes certificates, all their certificates on the solution under the same external root CA. So we're looking to support an ICA at the top of all the Kubernetes certificates. And then as far as the last half of the year, one of the things we're looking at is, there'll be many more obviously, but we have some users that are looking for mandatory access control. So in the past, that was going to be SE Linux with CentOS, but it'll be AppArmor now that we're moving to Debian. And the last slide I had was really just talk about some of the community in StarlingX. I guess maybe I shouldn't have said problem. Our biggest challenge in the StarlingX community is really our diversity. Since the beginning of StarlingX, the StarlingX community is primarily consisted of Wind River and Intel. Intel's Intel contribution sort of dwindled a bit, but we're kind of reviving that in some different areas. So we're at least trying to maintain that. But we want to bring in many more companies into the fold as far as the community to get just to leverage different use cases that these users are going to bring in, as well as contributions. So we've discussed this in both our PTGs this year. I think one of our strategies is that we first want to attract more diverse users of StarlingX, and then really work on those new users to become contributors. So we identified a number of actions around how to attract the new users and how to and how to bring those users into a position where they can be contributors. So there's a number of things that we're looking at, improving our website, writing technical blogs, making it easier to kick the tires, sort of thing. And then on the contribution side and support for new users, it's really, we have a bad reputation for poor presence and response on our mailing list. And well, I should have said OFTC, but so we make a conscious effort to improve that, as well as a conscious effort when we're working with the new users to basically understand their use cases in kind of an intent to suggest improvements that they could make in StarlingX for their use case and kind of turn them into contributors. So that's again, that's key focus for the community area in the coming year.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. It's a lot of, great work going into the StarlingX community. And I think that last point you made about, conscious effort to, maintaining like the mailing list and the OFTC things, it's really challenging. And what are some of the things that y'all are hoping to improve on that this year when you're looking at new contributors? Is it getting more folks active, or is it just decreasing response time?
Yeah, it's. I think what we've seen in the past is that a lot of the existing contributors from Wind River and Intel that are the experienced ones kind of have their heads down, working on their contribution and are not, supporting the mailing list. So we're looking at, explicitly, assigning on a rotating basis, okay, you manage the mailing list this week, you manage the mailing list last week. And we're going to try different techniques like that to see which work and to get better support in there. Awesome.
Well, thank you. It's a lot of great things coming out of y'all's community. Now I want to bring back all of our speakers from today. So I think we want to stop sharing the slide. There we go. And then if everyone wants to come back on video, there we are. So one of the questions, and we didn't have any additional from the audience, but I personally had one because, I know we're 2 years now into a global pandemic that's really affected, in-person events as well as how we collaborate synchronously. And while we do have async methods like mailing lists and OFTC, I wanted to see what kind of impact that this has had on y'all's specific communities and what kind of things have you done to try and overcome some of those challenges? So maybe Ghansham, I'll start with you from an OpenStack perspective.
Yeah, sure. So like in terms of like if we quantify what impact or in terms of contribution and community development, it's difficult, because if you see the number of changes or the things feature implemented in OpenStack from before pandemic and during pandemic is around 20% has been decreased. But there are a lot of factors in that. Pandemic is obviously one. Company focusing on other things is also one, and OpenStack is becoming more stable or mature. That is also a thing, right? But we have seen like few of the small projects where we had few contributors maintaining those. So they are obviously decreased in the contributors. And in terms of like other big projects like Nova, Ironics, Interglance, there has been things going in the same way. Mm-hmm. So because like it's a development on computers, so it's a remote job, we don't need like separate infra to physically go somewhere and do our job. So that has been very helpful even in the pandemic. And as overall, I'll say it's going smooth. It has not impacted much, but the one thing has impacted is our face-to-face meetup and discussion. That obviously we do in virtually event and virtual way, but obviously a human touch is when you meet face-to-face to the people you are working over the years, and the discussion you do the face-to-face. So that has been like some extent impacted the development things. And to overcome those, yes, we do meet up virtually more and more. Not just the PTZ or infra summit, but also like the meetings and ad hoc discussion. For example, the pain point discussion we are doing on video call so that we can interact in more speedy and productive way. So those are the things we are trying to improve the things.
No, interesting. And Peng Tao, how about you? Is there any kind of impact from the Kata Containers community that the pandemic has had?
As I can see it, I would say not so much. In last year, we have delivered a very steady releases throughout the year, same as the one before. So the impact is not that much, but we do certainly miss meeting the community folks and hope the pandemic ends sooner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
James, how about you for Zuul? Have y'all seen any impacts?
I don't know about you, but I'm starting to run out of t-shirts. I haven't gotten a new t-shirt in years.
Yeah.
But I think, probably all of our communities were set up pretty well for distributed work before all of this started. So while, we've all seen major changes to our lives, it's maybe been a speed bump in terms of development, but it hasn't been a major impediment. And I'm glad that we were in that position before the pandemic happened, and I'm glad that people have been able to see the benefit of remote work and online collaboration and so forth during this time. I'm hoping that sticks around even after the pandemic, because that's really the key to building communities that work across organizations. So yeah. The other thing I've noticed is I feel like with more people working from home, I've been seeing people interact a little more off hours or that sort of thing. Maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's not, depending on what your culture is and what your own life work balance goals are. But it is a change. I think, as long as you keep an eye on that and don't overcommit yourself, that can be a healthy thing.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I agree. Like, we've had this like really good foundation set up, because I mean, just on this episode, we have people from Canada and China and the United States. And we have this like way of collaborating that whether you're at one organization or in one country or another, that, some of these benefits have hopefully carried on through the pandemic. But yeah, the time when you are online and not online has started to blur a little bit. So hopefully that's something we can all personally work on. Greg, before we wrap up, is there anything else that you think that has impacted the StarlingX community around this past couple of years?
Yeah, I think I just echo what everybody else has said, is that, one, we're super lucky, the industry that we're in, that we can work, online, almost, at 99% efficiency sort of thing. But I do agree with the face-to-face, like PTG and summits, definitely miss those, just because, obviously the face-to-face collaboration makes a big deal if you're not directly working with someone a lot, and it's really the outside of meetings discussions that you have at coffee break or at dinner or something like that are valuable. And then the other thing that the summits and PTGs help with is that you're totally isolated, so you're completely away from your job, you're thinking completely about your open source activity. So definitely miss that.
Yeah, no, I miss that as well. And that actually kind of bridges well into the next thing I want to talk about, but we have run out of time. But first, before we do that, I wanted to thank y'all. I know that y'all are all leaders in the technical communities for your project, so your time is extremely limited and valuable. So thanks for coming on to kind of provide those update of what y'all have been working on and what is going to come from your communities. I also wanted to thank y'all because y'all all work for an OpenInfra Foundation member. So Wind River, Ant Group, NEC, and newly Acme Gating has just joined as an OpenInfra Foundation Silver member. So thank you all for your support and your continued work to continue to build communities who write open source software that runs in production. But to Greg's point, we actually do have a summit that's coming up in person that I'm really excited to be talking about. So from June 7th through 9th, we are going to have the summit in Berlin. Registration and sponsorship is now open. And personally, I'm very excited. Next week, the CFP opens. So if you have a talk around any of these open source projects or other infrastructure projects that you'd like to talk to the global community about, please submit those topics. And if you'd like to actually help curate the content for the summit, we are accepting programming committee nominations right now. So bookmark openinfra.dev/summit. It has a lot of great information around registration and sponsorship and the CFP that will open next week. But in addition to the CFP opening, we wanted to actually provide more context to what makes a good submission. So in 2 weeks on January 20th, my math has been off apparently, we are going to have some of those programming committee members come and talk about what kind of submissions would make a good summit talk. We have the tracks here. One new one to note will be hardware enablement. But if you've never presented at a summit before, or like most of us, it's been a while since you've been to a conference, join us on OpenInfra Live on January 20th to hear what makes a good submission and how you can increase your likelihood of presenting at the summit. That's all from us today. So thank you for tuning in from wherever you're streaming, and have a great time with OpenInfra.